call the meeting to order at this point in time, but I'm going to ask for a motion to be moved that we can defer the minutes until the end this evening because we are having a late start, and it is because there's been a lot of traffic on the road, we know, and it's very difficult for some of the persons to be here. So since we're starting late, I'm just going to ask that someone move the motion that the minutes be referred.
I beg to so move, sir.
I beg to
Madam
second.
Ford, and seconded by Mr. Lane. Thank you. Today we have oral presentation and examination from Mr. Anderson Cherry, Chief Executive Officer, and his team. And that team will comprise of Mr. Michael Ford and Mr. Trevor Manning. As mentioned earlier, those two who are supposed to be with us may have difficulties getting here due to the weather and traffic on the road. But I think we should still start. Mr. Cherry should be online, so I'm just going to ask the technical team to verify that he is online. I'm looking.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cherry, are you there? We had some difficulties last time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Minister.
Good morning, sir. How are you? Can you hear us clearly?
Yes, sir. Good morning to everyone. Yes, I can hear you, Minister. Good morning to the panel.
Good morning. So what we would like is if you can, again, raise the volume on your end for us. Yeah. And I also need to mention that MP Trevor Prescott is also an online member of this committee.
Good morning, Minister. Is it better?
Yes, that is perfect. Thank you so very much.
All right.
So I think a member of your team, Mr. Trevor Manning, is here. We're going to ask that he can come in. Director EPD. Good morning, sir. This is Trevor. No, thank you very much, Mr. Manning. We understand how difficult it is out there on the road with the traffic.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, understandable. We also want to welcome with us Mr. Anthony Headley, who is the director of the EPD, and they're here also to lend technical support for anything that we may encounter as we go through. At this point in time then, I'm going to ask Mr. Anderson Cherry, the floor, so to speak, is open to you, sir. And
Good morning.
you can go.
Let me interrupt you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning,
I just
Mr. President.
identify myself as being present.
That's fine. We identified that you were online. That's all right,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Good. Just before we get started, I just want to let everyone know we've only just received the Health Services Amendment Act statements from your group. We've not had a chance to go through them as such, as we've only gotten them a few minutes ago. But we're going to allow you, Mr. Cherry and team, as much time as humanly possible to go through this so that at the end of it all, everyone is totally satisfied and clear as to what the suggestions will be, or what the problems coming out of this could be, so that we can ensure equity, so to speak, in this matter. So I'll hand over to you, Mr. Cherry, at this point in time, and welcome again.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, team. Well, first, let me introduce myself. For those who doesn't know me, I'm Anderson Cherry, the Managing Director of Jose & Jose, and also the Chairman of the Asarus Group. And a little background about myself. I've been in business for around 36 years. I started around when I was 16 years old. But go back to around when I was 11 years old. You know, I was privileged to hear an interview on the radio with Sir Charles Williams at the time. You know, when he said among Black people, there's not much second and third generation businesses. And at that point in time, I knew I wanted Jose & Jose to be a second generation business. And fast forward till today, you know, I find that a lot of businesses, especially Black businesses, doesn't have the opportunity that others have. And my presentation today is presenting an alternative in terms of putting a fee or a charge for cleaning a lot onto the land tax bill, and also presenting an opportunity for enfranchisement. So I'm going to ask Mr. Calvin Newell. I prepared a document. I'm sorry that it wasn't sent before, that everyone could have read it yesterday. Calvin, could you share the screen and put up that document, please?
Sure. Good morning, team, panel, and members of parliament. Forgive me if my protocol is off. I've never done this before.
That's fine, Mr. Noel.
Right.
Go right ahead.
All right, what we'll present in, and I will let the let it be read out. This is what I shared with everyone. Calvin, me.
Should I run?
Yes, go ahead. The summary. Yeah, go ahead. Calvin, I'm not hearing it.
You're not hearing it?
Yes, we are. And we have our copies here, so you can go right ahead. But I'm just going to ask everyone, whenever you're finished speaking, to please mute your microphone so that we don't have any feedback and any problems as we go through this process. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning.
So, Mr. Noel?
Yes, please.
Yes, are you ready? You're going to be speaking to us? Or Mr. Cherry?
Yeah, we are not hearing it at all, Calvin.
You're not?
No, not hearing it on there.
All right. Give me 1 sec. Then what I'll do is I'll log in using a second account, and I'll drive that through the phone. If you give me a few seconds, I'll do that. If that's okay.
Yeah, please. Really.
Okay, so gentlemen, we're having a little challenge trying to figure out who is going to be presenting on behalf of you.
I will be presenting, sir.
This is Mr. Cherry.
I'm just hearing you. Visualize capacity.
just give us 1 second, please.
I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Minister Ishmael from the Ministry of Health. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Okay.
Are we
All
ready,
right.
gentlemen?
I think we second. Give me 1 second. I have to mute this one. This come-
Good morning. Is this Mr. Michael Ford? Thank you for joining us, sir.
All right. See how this is.
Okay, so we really need to get a move on, and I'd like to be very clear. Is it Mr. Calvin Noel who is going to be presenting on behalf of the group, or is it going to be you, Mr. Cherry? Because we really do need to start.
Mr. Chair, we can join him. Issue here is
All right, if you're not going to
trying to
be,
get with the feedback.
as I mentioned earlier, once you're not going to be speaking, please mute your device, and we allow Mr. Cherry to begin. And this is in an effort to make it easier for the technical team to not have the feedback and the different things that would interrupt the session. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Amendment Act 2024 in Barbados.
All right, Calvin, could you please pull up the present point, the PowerPoint, please?
Working on.
Yeah, okay. Gentlemen and ladies, sorry about this.
Okay, gentlemen, I'll have to read. I think I have an internal problems with the speaker. So we read summary. The Health Service Amendment Act 2024 in Barbados introduces a new administrative penalties within the Health Service Act Cap 44. Aiming to enhance regulatory enforcement, the Act established definitions such as a filth and offensive matter and designates the Minister of Health as the official responsible for managing public health, including creating health districts across Barbados. The legislation permits penalties for health violations to be attached as charges to the property owners or occupants, recoverable as land tax. Affected parties can appeal these charges to the judge or a relief board, ensuring a structural process for a dispute. The amendment also includes related provisions within the Land Tax Act to streamline enforcement and appeals. However, the Waste Haulers Association, WHA, have two critical points for presentation associated with the Health Services Amendment Act. This should require some closer examination. Number one, the assignment of enforcement to the Ministry of Health. The Act places the Minister of Health at the center of the regulatory enforcement, managing penalties and overseeing health violations. However, there's a strong argument that the Chief Medical Officer, CMO, with their medical expertise and operational role in public health would be better suited because of his academic specialty to handle these responsibilities, ensuring more efficient and objective enforcement of health regulations. Number two, administrative penalties. The Act allows penalties for health violations to be recovered as a land tax, adding financial burden to already struggling landowners. WHA suggests an alternative approach that wouldn't further burden landowners, enfranchising Black-owned businesses, stimulating economic growth while maintaining public health goals. The key points for this medical officer as a best suited position under the Health Services Amendment Act 2024. One, the medical expertise and public health focus. The chief medical officer is a senior public health professional with extensive medical knowledge and experience in the field of public health. Their role is directly tied to the day-to-day monitoring and management of health issues, making them the most qualified person to understand the technical aspect of health violations, including identifying filth and offensive matter that could pose public health risks. The Minister's Health, though a key figure in shaping health policies, is often a political appointee who may not have the same depth of public health experience. Decisions related to administrative penalties, which have direct health implications, would benefit from the technical insight and medical expertise of the CMO rather than being driven by a political appointee figure. Operational efficiency. The CMO is already responsible for overseeing the implementation of public health policies and enforcing health regulations. They are more closely involved with local health officers, environmental health inspectors, and public health departments, giving them direct operational control over the health service. The operational oversight makes the CMO better positioned to ensure that administrative penalties for health violations are applied fairly and consistently. Delegating the responsibilities of the Ministry of Health could lead to delays in inefficiency, as the minister's primary focus is on broader health policies and government-wide initiative. The CMO focuses on more localized and operational, allowing a faster response time and a more effective enforcement of penalties. The separation of policies and enforcement. In good governance models, there's a clear separation between policymaking and enforcement. While the Ministry of Health is tasked with setting policies and providing strategic direction, it is the role of the CMO to enforce the policies. This separation ensures that enforcement is objective, scientifically informed, and free from political influence. By assigning the enforcement responsibilities, including penalties and health violation charges, to the CMO, the government would promote a more balanced system where public health decisions are rooted in medical science and practical expertise, reducing the risk for politically motivated actions that could undermine the fairness of health enforcement process.
What I'm
Responsibility-
basically saying here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the minister, I believe, have a lot more stuff to do, and a simple task of looking at the law, clearing the law, and ensuring the law is cleared. I believe that responsibility should be the officer and not the medical officer, not the minister. Continue.
Responsibilities for public health outcome. The CMO is directly responsible for the health outcome of the population, assigning the responsibility of managing health violations and imposing penalties to the CMO ensures greater accountability and alignment with public health goals. As the official task with overseeing the overall health of Barbados, the CMO has a vested interest in ensuring that health violations are swiftly addressed and that penalties act as an effective deterrent to behavior that would harm public health. The Ministry of Health. On the other hand, the Minister of Health, on the other hand, may have competing priorities related to health budgeting, legislative advocacy, and government affairs, which could divert attention away from the day-to-day enforcement of health regulations. Having the CMO in charge of enforcement ensures continuous focus on health outcomes and regulatory compliance. Streamline appeals process. The Health Services Amendment Act 2024 allows affected parties to appeal health violation penalties to a judge or a relief board. The CMO, given the hands-on involvement in the health administration, will be more knowledgeable about the specific circumstances surrounding a violation and better equipped to handle appeals or provide relevant evidence during appeal process. The Minister of Health lacks the technical background to handle detailed appeals based on the medical or environmental health data. Assigning this role to the CMO will ensure faster, fair resolution in the appeals process based on expert understanding in the public health risk. In conclusion, expertise, efficiency, and focus on health outcomes. Assigning the role of enforcing health penalties and overseeing the health violations to the Chief Medical Officer under the Health Services Amendment Act 2024 would provide significant advantages in terms of medical expertise, operational efficiency, and separation of policy from enforcement. The CMO, as a dedicated public health official, is better equipped to manage the day-to-day intricacies of the public health enforcement, ensuring that penalties are applied fairly and in the line with public health best practices. The Minister of Health should focus on broader strategic direction and healthcare, while the CMO should be entrusted with the crucial enforcement role, creating a more balanced, effective, and science-based approach to managing Barbados' public health with the oversight of the Ministry of Health. All right, so it will lead to the financial, sustainable, and socially empowering alternative to the administrative penalty imposed. Government fund structure, the initial investment, the concept is the government creates a $6 million fund allocated to 20 Black-owned businesses, with each business employing no less than 5 workers. Job creation and stability. This sets up a steady, meaningful employment, ensuring stable income over 100 people. Ensuring stable income for over 100 people, 20 businesses by 5 employees. The economic flow. Daily wages, each worker would earn $120 per day for 5 days a week, creating a reliable wage-based economy within the communities. Payroll, total weekly payroll per business is $3,000, 120 by 5 workers with the monthly payroll reaching $12,000 per business. Tax revenue, both on employer and employee, are deducted from the salaries, sustaining revenue flow to the government without the proposed administrative penalties imposed on the landowners directly. The loan structure, each business takes out a loan for essential equipment, bobcat, truck, and tools with monthly repayment of $4,000. This promotes responsible capital use and asset ownership while stimulating local lending markets. Business viability and revenue generation. Service fees. Each property cleanup is priced at around $5,000. This pricing could yield substantial revenue. Revenue from each business. Assuming 100 cleanup jobs weekly, each business generates $25,000 per month, $5,000 per job by 4 weeks. After payroll, loan repayment, this model sustains the business profitability and potentially scaling further. Profitability. Post expenses, each business would retain a minimum of $5,000, which could support business growth, equipment maintenance, and reinvest into business or community. Benefits of no administrative penalties imposed. Community empowerment. Financial relief. By not having administrative penalties imposed on landowners, particularly those with fixed or modest incomes, such as our school teachers, nurses, and police officers, they are not further burdened with the annual tax payment. Let me read that again. They are not further burdened by the annual tax payment. This allows them to redirect funds towards essential living expenses such as housing, utilities, and childcare. Economic reallocation. Instead of further taxing individual landowners, the fund will be derived directly from local businesses and workers through the government's investment in the community cleanup service. Encouragement of Black-owned businesses growth. Encouragement of Black-owned businesses growth. Consistent work opportunity. The government's investment in the cleanup initiative allows small Black-owned businesses and local contractors to benefit from consistent work. These businesses, empowered by government contracts, can build financial stability and foster entrepreneurship within the communities. Nurturing entrepreneurship. By not burdening landowners, they can redirect their funds back into local businesses, driving demand for services and enhancing community participation and economic growth. Sustainable revenue model. Tax revenue replacement. Rather than relying on administrative penalties imposed through land tax, the government generates revenue through PAYE, NIS, and VAT from the businesses and the workers involved in the cleanup operation. These taxes deducted can better replace the proposed administrative penalties on land tax collections, creating a self-sustainable model where economic activity from businesses contribute to government revenue while enfranchising Black-owned businesses. Long-term economic stability. For landowners who are also part of the workforce, this system recycles economic value within the community, ensuring that wages are spent locally and contributes to sustainable economic growth. Improved public health. Direct benefits to property owners. Properties are clean without property owners bearing the direct financial burden of the cleanup operation. The government directly enhances public health, aligning with the goals of the Health Services Act, ensuring that public health is prioritized without imposing additional costs on already struggling landowners. Environmental improvement. Clean, well-maintained properties not only improve our health concerns, but also our safety concerns of the community, with increased overall livability of neighborhoods, providing landowners with a cleaner, safer environment that may also increase property value over time. government revenue. This information is calculated in Barbadian dollars. PAYE, pay as you earn, using the following structure in Barbados: income up to $50,000, 12.5%; income above $50,000, 28.5%; value added tax, 17.5%. Tax revenue from business. The assumption is revenue per cleanup, $5,000; jobs per month per business, 5. The monthly gross per business is 5,000 jobs by $5,000 by 5 jobs equals $25,000. Daily wages per worker, 120. Weekly payroll, 5 workers by 120 by 5 days gives us $3,000. So the monthly payroll per business would be $12,000. Fuel and maintenance cost, $2,500 per month. Equipment, loan repayment, and miscellaneous, $4,000 a month. PAYE tax calculations for Barbadians. The PAYE rate is 12.5 for income up to $50,000 and 28.5 for income above $50,000. Each worker annual salary is annual income per worker $600 per week by 52 weeks, 31,200. Since each worker's income is below $50,000, the 12.5 PAYE rate is applied. Annual PAYE per worker, 31,200 by 12.5 equals 3,900. The total annual PAYE per business, 3,900 by 5 workers, equaling 19,500. Annual PAYE revenue from 20 businesses is 19,500. The annual PAYE revenue from 20 business by 19,500 is $390,000. National insurance contributions. The NAS rates are 6.75 for employees, 11.25 for employers. Employees' NAS contribution per week, $600 by 6.75 equals $40.50 per week. Contributions per worker, employer, should be employer here, $600 by 11.25, 67.50 per week. The total weekly contributions per worker is $108. The total weekly contribution per business is per worker is $540. Monthly NAS contributions per business is $540 by 4 weeks is $2,160. Annual NAS contribution per business is $2,160 by 12 months, equaling $25,920. The total annual NAS revenue from 20 businesses is 20 businesses by $25,920, totaling $518,400. Value added tax, property cleanup per job, 5,000. VAT rate, 17.5. VAT per job is 5,000 by 17.5, equaling $875. Monthly VAT per business on 5 jobs equals 875 by 5 equals 4,375. Annual VAT per business is 4,375 by 12, equaling 52,500. So the total annual VAT revenue from 20 businesses is 20 businesses by $52,500, equaling $1,050,000. Hope I caught that number correct.
Yes, let me check it here. Gentlemen, what I'm saying here is we need to look at the model, not to add taxes onto a landowner, but because we already have a tax structure in place with national insurance, VAT, and PAYE. If we can get more people employed, more tax will be coming out of those people's monies, where then we can get enough money to clear house. And then we're going to look at different types of land. We're going to look at the regular householder, a school teacher, a policeman, that these people's land is overgrown because they just don't have the money to build or to clean the land in the first place. Looking back at I look at my situation. I have a lot of properties, and having a lot of properties puts me at a huge disadvantage in life because you have a net worth that is high because of your real estate, but your land is not producing anything. If the land is not producing anything, the land is not earning anything. So it becomes a liability. We think that the land is really an asset because you buy at $100,000 and now value $150,000 3 to 5 years down the line. But now you have to pay the bank, when you take out the bank interest, when you take out the land tax, and now if it have a water meter on it, and you add the water cost, now you're adding a cleanup cost on that land. You're putting the landowner at a huge disadvantage. So if I'm saying here, government, look, let's clear the land free for the people. Let's enfranchise 20 businesses, which would hire more people. And if these 20 businesses only clear 1 lot per week for government, you will have over $1 million in tax at a $5,000. They use a modest 5,000 rate to clear a lot, being in the construction business also. Now, we know the lots could vary in sizes and in cost and debris, but the more debris or the more cost it is better for the government to clear the lots with the model of the government paying while kick-starting small businesses. Now, if you look, there's 5 weeks, 5 days in a week, and being in business, I know I can clear more than 1 lot per day. So, but these numbers is based on 1 lot. So imagine that those young entrepreneurs going and find other additional work on the outside for their Bobcat and their little truck and stuff, and they could do 5 lots in a week. That would make that revenue based on the tax structure. Government would get way more tax and still not burdening the landowner. Now, if you look at our tax structure, we're paying a lot of land tax, sewage and sewage tax. It's very expensive to live and to do business in Barbados. But if we can empower entrepreneurs to hire people and go there and do more work, I think that we can achieve a goal based on the existing tax structure than trying to implement a new structure, a new penalty. Now, and this presentation hasn't taken into consideration the recent tax at the pump. And these vehicles are going to use a lot of fluid, which is going to increase government's revenue. And as I said, one of the key things, when I shared what started me out in business when I was 11 years old and hear that interview by Sir Charles, is that we need to empower Black people. And no better person to do it than the government of Barbados. I often tell my kids, I started, I think I did good for myself, thanks to God and my father who mentored me early. But I started life with a huge disadvantage. I was born in Barbados, and I was born Black. And I would love to see this government, who, when I look at this government, has so much, all of us, so many people that look like me, who runs the government, to really look to see how we can enfranchise us as a people and put us to work and give us an equal opportunity. And this bill right now is a very good opportunity that the government can look at my numbers. My numbers can't lie. Then they can get the expert to look at them and look at the way that we can enfranchise people while get the locks clear with no additional burden, while the government still makes way more revenue from the existing tax structure. Yes, and that is my presentation. And you all have the numbers to look at, and I'm here to, and anyone can ask me any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cherry, for your presentation. I'm going to open the floor now, and I'm going to go to Minister Ishmael.
Thank you very much, Chair and Mr. Cherry, and team for your presentation this morning. Let me also extend good morning greetings to the members of the Chamber and the committee and all of the guests who are here as well. I would like to start out with where the presentation started, which questions and also questions the role of the Minister of Health in the proposed legislation, and also proposes and suggests that it be changed to the Chief Medical Officer, who is one of the more senior technocrats in the ministry relative to public health. I think that some assumptions are being made that are not in alignment with how our legislation typically operates within Barbados. And I believe we do have the team here from CPC who can confirm that there is a fairly standard and common way of drafting legislation that allows for critical decisions to be made by a minister responsible for that area within the responsibilities of the executive and the framework of the executive, which is the Cabinet of Barbados. I do not believe that the legislation contemplates that a minister has to have all of the technical expertise within himself or herself. But I do believe that, as has been the custom across the many decades of governance, that a minister is advised and guided by technical human resources within his or her portfolio. So I think that this one is in keeping with standard drafting protocols within our legislation. But then two, I think that an assumption that is being made, and maybe inaccurately made, is that a minister is the person who has to have and hold all of the technical expertise within himself or herself. That is not how it works. Ministers are guided by technical officers within the ministry. They're supported by technical officers within their ministry. A decision that a minister makes is often at its core led by, advised by, recommended by, proposed by technical officers within his or her ministry. So I would not want to encourage us to depart from what has been a standard procedure for many years in drafting, to then change this to be in the remit of a chief medical officer or a senior technical person. I also want to highlight the fact that whilst the recommendations that are being made do offer some benefits in terms of the CMO being able to move quicker and different things like that I would have heard in the presentation, I do believe that there's significant benefit in having this responsibility continuing to be vested in a person who sits within the executive, because the way that the cabinet works is that each of those persons who sit around that table bearing varying responsibilities and areas across the landscape of Barbados, they can then benefit from each other's expertise, and they actually have the authority to be able to make decisions a lot quicker, a lot faster, and also being able to allocate the financial resources of that ministry to being able to address any issues that may be presented. In addition to that, I think what is not being covered in the proposal that is before us is that a minister ultimately delegates his responsibility and his authority to those same chief officers, those same head technical officers within the ministry as well. So the authority flows from the cabinet, where once again they sit and they can see the entire landscape of what's happening in Barbados. So a public health issue is not just within the Ministry of Health. It affects sometimes the Ministry of Agriculture. It may affect the Ministry of Education. It may affect the Ministry of Transport and Works. And because of the minister, by very nature of how cabinet works and how the executive works and functions, I believe that a minister is best placed to being able to address emergency matters and even matters of public health, as we're discussing today, when the need arises. I think I'm going to stop there. I really have a lot of questions. I'm not going to go. I just want to deal with that one first. But I think in terms of the financial proposals, I do have a lot of questions. I will just say here, I will come back in, but I'll let other persons, and maybe if Mr. Chapman would like to jump in here as well, if he wants to. Okay, but I will allow other members to be able to weigh in on the first part of your presentation or to give their first views, but I do have some very, very, very serious challenges with the assumptions that are being made within this financial proposal that is before us. I believe the assumptions are very ambitious. I do believe that they do favor the businesses that will be involved, but I'm not entirely sure, and I'm not sold from this first presentation, I'm not sold that the economic benefit to the country is as rosy as is being presented within the proposal. I have specific questions that I will delve into later on, but I will leave this as my first and opening contribution to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Ishmael. And I would like to ask EPD if they would comment at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Cherry, the Honorable Chamber. Good morning.
Before you go, please, for the record, please state your name and before you start.
Okay, yes. Anthony Headley, Director, Environmental Protection Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting presentation, I must say. In terms of the comments made by Minister Ishmael, I'm in full agreement with the comments made by Minister Ishmael. At this point in time, the only reference I would like to draw to the attention of the chamber would be Section 9 of the Health Services Act, reference the first point made by Anderson Sherry that speaks to the delegation of authority from the minister to the chief medical officer and other technical officers within the Ministry of Health. So therefore, the issue with respect to the efficiency and functioning, all of that has been addressed since 1969. And the examples are there before us from the inception of the Ministry of Health in terms of how they've been operating, their ability to address the various public health issues. Yes, there have been some limitations in terms of how we've been addressing some of the more modern day challenges that are confronting us. But in terms of the delegation of authority and the arrangements within the Ministry of Health, I think that those are adequate at this point in time. On the issue of the financial mechanism, my first question would be, you've made a recommendation regarding a $6 million fund. How is this fund going to be capitalized? That's my main question at this point in time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cherry, would you like to answer?
Yes, the fund is already capitalized, one, and two, the revenue that can be derived from the tax or from the VAT, the payway of businesses. And is the existing model that's being used right now. We collect payway, VAT, and corporation tax. That runs the country. It's just that you're circulating that money among small businesses right now. And these small businesses is able to hire more people, and you will get the same multiplication effect in terms of revenue coming back to the government. And that's the model the government uses here. That's the standard model right now.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the other members of your team for their comments at this point in time, Mr. Ford and Mr. Manning. And I'll start with Mr. Manning.
Hi, good morning. Trevor Manning, Garbage Master Limited, General Manager. Morning, everyone. Well, I can speak for me and Mr. Ford, but we also had this document in front of us for just this morning. So we just had a speed read. And yes, there's quite a few things I've underlined as we went through. So we are not fully up on it, but we are here based for Mr. Cherry. But as we go along, I would probably, if you point out some of the same areas, we would expand on that as well. You have anything to say? Okay.
Okay, thank you. CPC, in terms of, and I think someone made a few mention of it, but I would like you to reinforce it for the benefit of those persons who may be looking in with us in terms of the legislation and how it is drafted, to ensure that the minister who is responsible for any particular area would be the person who does most of the delegating and things like that in these circumstances.
Good morning, Shaquille Newton, Parliamentary Counsel, acting from the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel. Just to underpin what the Honourable Minister would have said regarding delegation in some legal analysis. In the normal course of things, the Minister does not act personally in these matters. And the basis of this is in the 1943 case of Carl Toner, which established the Carl Toner principle, otherwise known as the alter ego principle. And when legislation references the minister, essentially what it means is that the minister, one, is advised by the technocrats within his ministry, and two, it is automatically assumed that the persons within the ministry will be carrying out these functions in their professional capacity on behalf of the minister. And I would have made this point at previous meetings of this Joint Select Committee, and I'm reiterating the point for the benefit of everyone, and to make it abundantly clear that the minister is not responsible for the administration of the Act personally.
Thank you very much, and I'm hoping that that would clear up any misconceptions that persons online watching may have in this matter or any other related matters as it comes to ministries and ministers. I want to ask though, Mr. Cherry, a bit about the $5,000 charge that you are proposing. Could you go a little bit deeper into how you came to the numbers that you have? And you mentioned earlier that you were aware that some lots would be larger than others, and how would that in turn affect how you as the business person, how your business either profits or does not profit from doing this particular work?
Okay, first, the numbers that was presented was a 5,000 to clear a lot, just as an average that we could have a number to work with. And the number of $4,000 of some person, of a teacher or a police officer, was just a number to work with that. We know it's way less that the officers get, the nurse, teacher, and we know that based on my expertise on clearing the lot that just overgrown with bush around an average house spot of 7,000 square feet could run around $5,000 or less to clear. Now, we know it's dependent on the debris, if there's a lot of trees, a lot of bush, we know all that kind of stuff. However, it is in the government interest that the lots be 20, 30, 40, 50,000 to clear, because the higher the lot, the more VAT tax pay away in terms of time, hours, loads, tipping fee, diesel as being burnt. The more expensive it becomes, the more revenue comes back into government hand. If you look at our entire tax structure, from an average person, when you add national insurance, tax, VAT, pay away, land tax, diesel at the pump, water and sewage contribution, we're over 60-something%. I think it was like 67 when I first looked at it. And when they add in a mortgage, the 6% for a loan mortgage, about 60% of our income goes into tax, over 60%. And if you're like me, that is shopping online now, and you have that additional tax, we have a lot of tax. And I'm saying the more money that we spend, the more revenue government. And all it needs to be doing, all government as the person who's collecting these taxes is to spread it among as much people as possible and not go into the hand of a privileged few. The more that circulate, the more the economy will stimulate, and the more money that will be spent, and the more revenue the government will get. That is how government's supposed to operate. And in this case, and if we use this as a model, and government continue to use it in many more areas, in garbage collection, and there's many more areas that the VSRs see that government could use this model to stimulate the economy, get people off of welfare, because we can hire a lot of people in cleaning these lots, cleaning the drains. We get them off of welfare. Government going to save an amount of money in welfare. Government going to save in, there's so many different spills going to come off of enfranchisement or kickstarting the economy like this. There's so much. We don't have to be giving people so much millions of dollars in welfare. That's how this could be funded. We get those people on welfare who are able to work, we get them to work. Then we give them jobs. We give them simple jobs that could bring revenue and make them feel a lot better. We can save, how much rent these pay for those people? No, they can pay their own rent now. They can take care of their children. And when we look at welfare, you're seeing the mothers on welfare, the grandmother, and it becomes generational. We need to break those generational curses, I should say, or traditions. We need to break them. We need to get people employed and learning how to earn money, keep it, and let it work for them. We need to let them understand how the economy, how this machine works, how this economic machine works. And I really would like to dive into the numbers with Mr. Ishmael. I'm excited to dive into the numbers.
Right,
and one more thing, Minister, in reference to the powers with the minister and what is tradition, is it right? Does that make it right? But let me just say what I think should happen, that how government probably need to look. Let us say that we have 10 ministries out there. I think the persons in the ministry should be first in the ministry even before they come to Parliament. Why is that? Look, we reshuffle. Let us look at if there's a minister, he spent a lot of time. Okay, let's look at our Minister of Mr. Edghill, tourism. He was in tourism all of his life. I think that he's a good minister there. So imagine we have some person in the health sector. I think there could be a good minister to be. So then the PSs and the technical team guided them, they can have knowledge. Like, we're going to debate the numbers shortly. And I'm really strong at numbers. So when Mr. Ishmael, we are debating numbers, I will have a view.
I think we have a bit of a technical problem at the moment. Mr. Cherry seems to be stuck. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Mr. Chapman from the Ministry of Health and come back to him afterwards. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Ronald Chapman, Chief Environmental Health Officer, Ministry of Health and Wellness. The present legislation allows for a summary conviction of up to 12 months in prison and a fine of up to $5,000. The proposed changes to the regulations would allow for a $300 fine. It has removed the imprisonment. It is now an administrative fine as opposed to having to go to a magistrate's court. And then it adds $10 per day for every day that the nuisance is not addressed. It is far less punitive than it was before. I believe it is a much more humane piece of legislation. And although $300 is still a lot of money for somebody to fine. So it still does provide the necessary motivation for persons to clean their lots and so on. But I also want to add, I know we've pretty much stressed the cleaning of lots, but the legislation is a nuisance legislation. It also deals with other nuisances. So if an inspector goes to someone's premises and they have water running from their premises onto somebody else's premises, that is also a nuisance. Yes, overgrown vegetation is a nuisance. Having refuse on your premises can be considered a nuisance. In fact, the nuisance regulations, when you read it, it's an extremely wide piece of legislation. It states anything, accumulation, and so on, that is in a condition that is hazardous to health. So the width of this legislation and the changes that are being made allows for the inspectors to carry out their work and carry it out much more efficiently. And I must say that and I will speak to myself personally, I am one of the persons who would lay the information before the law court and prosecute persons before the law court. It takes an inordinate amount of time to bring a case to fruition. A lot of the times, the lawyers don't turn up because they have other court cases in high court, and it's not their fault. They have to eat, so they have other cases in high court. And high court takes precedence over the magistrate's court. Sometimes, for some reason, and there are lots of other reasons that it takes a while. So it is easy to get the charges read and so on, but to bring it to an end, this allows us to move quickly and to really get persons to associate the nuisance with the fine that is associated. And I believe that this piece of legislation will work very well in helping us to bring Barbados to where it's supposed to be.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Minister Ishmael, I also want to reiterate that at the last sitting of this meeting, you also raised the point, Mr. Chapman, about the ability of your department, however, to deal with what could become potentially very hazardous situations in terms of health if you have buildup of any matter or any other things other than bush on properties and stuff like that. And this legislation also gives you the opportunity then to actually get those things done quickly and speed that process along. But I'm going to go to Minister Ishmael at this point in time.
I'm not sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, I would like to make
Mr. Prescott, I'll let you in. I'll let you in after Mr. Ishmael.
Okay,
Directly after.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade. Sorry. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not sure if we have Mr. Cherry back on because my comments would be more directly towards him. But hopefully, if he is not back on, he'll be able to catch back up and follow on. I wanted to say here, Mr. Chairman, that I believe that the government is very supportive of business, right, in Barbados. We do believe strongly in the enfranchisement and empowerment of our people. We've done that through many different examples, from agriculture with the FEED program, which is the farming empowerment in enfranchisement drive, I think it is. I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's FEED. And we've done that through many of our different educational pursuits as well, in terms of even providing the trust loans, UWI being able to allow our young aspiring students to be able to pursue their academic dreams with limited financial strain. We've done quite a bit as an administration to demonstrate that we are supportive of entrepreneurship and the empowerment and enfranchisement of our people. Whether black, white, brown, green, it does not matter. All Barbadians have a chance to eke out a living in this society. So I'm very supportive of Mr. Cherry's thrust, which is largely business oriented. But I do believe that it is not well placed within the current scope of this legislation to try to farm out a business model that will enfranchise these 20 businesses. I believe ultimately we have to remember what this legislation is all about. It is actually these regulations that we are enabling or enacting eventually will allow us to be able to better regulate the behavior of our people relative to one another. At the end of the day, as my colleague in the ministry, our acting chief environmental health officer, Mr. Chapman, would have just alluded to, at the end of the day, there's a broad range of nuisances that can impact upon the lives and the social well-being of many of our citizens. And whilst we are speaking in this case, and then based on this proposal on the overgrown lots and the bushing, there are so many different areas that people can encroach upon other people's sensibilities. And we want to make sure that we understand and appreciate and continue to center the discussion on these proposed amendments on ensuring that our citizens are better able to live with each other in a very civil way. That is the bedrock of what this is about. We must appreciate that at the end of the day, the penalties that are being enforced come after breach of legislation. As long as each person is taking their full responsibility seriously of maintaining their lots, they will not come into contact with these regulations. They will not come into contact with this legislation. They will not come into contact with the $300 penalty or the $10 a day fine. As long as our citizens take personal responsibility for their, and I want to encourage our people to take personal responsibility for their land holdings, for their properties, that will ensure that this legislation never is even applied. It just comes down to personal responsibility. That's what we're trying to get to at the end of the day. We want to create a society where everybody takes responsibility for what they own, for their assets, for their personal space. And I think that the next point that I will make that is aligned to that, it comes out of what Mr. Cherry would have shared in terms of his large number of land holdings across the island. I think ultimately, and he would have mentioned that if he sees it as a disadvantage because many of those properties are not productive. And therefore, I want to use that as a sounding board for encouraging the people of Barbados to ensure that your land holdings are productive. If that means putting a property on it, even if it is not your own private dwelling, and you can use it to generate some rental income, that is productive use of your property. If it is to plant some crops on it, that is productive use of your property. If it is to sell it and to make, get some income off of it and get some profit off of it, that is a productive use of it as well, and let somebody else then develop it. So I want to encourage the people of Barbados that the legislation, it does not set out to be punitive. You only get to the punitive side of it if you are lacking in or breaching in or defaulting in your responsibility as a landholder in the country and not taking care of your property, and or if there's any other nuisance that you collide with as it relates to the legislation and the regulations. So I want him to come back on so we can really delve into the financial matters, because that part is juicy for me, because as a businessman myself, I really want to have a business conversation with him as to these assumptions, but I will leave that there for now. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
And thank you. And I'll go directly to Minister Prescott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Minister Ishmael's view. I heard the council also view, first of all about what traditionally is on the statute books and the methodology that's being used for constructing these new forms of legislation. But I think what Mr. Cherry is trying to say is that if what we're saying around the table, those that are present there and myself, is that the legislation is fixed in its methodology and therefore they don't want to move away from the traditional design of what the people in the legal fraternity and what the people within the halls of parliament believe is eternal design, the eternal form of jargon that must be accepted by the average man. Legislation has to have clarity. And if the average man do not understand the legislation and the powers that be know that they do not understand the constructs within the legislation, then the powers that be has a responsibility to simplify legislation so that all persons will be fully aware of what the legislation means. I understand some of the terms that were used, but I'm just a layman, but I also believe that we are at a point now that where we witness any legal inhibitions or injustices in the legislation, we need to be able to respect the views of a businessman, but also a businessman when it comes to the jargon of the law is really a neophyte in the circumstances. I'm not saying that in any pejorative way about Mr. Cherry's presentation. Mr. Cherry is making a call for affirmative action in law, which is not something that is normal. We call for affirmative action, especially if we live in a post-colonial and a post-slavery environment. The laws were made at a specific time. The council made reference to the 1940s for the legislation itself. When those instruments were put in place, the average man had very little. The legislation was made in such a way to preserve the rights of people that don't look like us. By now, we should be thinking in terms of how we can, and it comes from a different philosophy, a different philosophical position of thought, and also a different understanding of jurisprudence itself based on what happens in the law courts in relation to these matters. Now, I know that what we're saying around the table is that when we see the word minister, there is some preamble or some explanatory section within the law itself, even if it's just the historical part of it, that is saying to you that the ultimate decision rests with the minister, and that all the other persons are have their whole delegated responsibilities of agents for the minister. But Mr. Chair is saying that if the information is coming from the public servant who has the technical and scientific skills to make the analysis, that is the point of contention. Can we put in legislation something that if the average man picks up the laws of Barbados, or even if he's referring to precedent from somewhere in the Commonwealth, can we not have written in the legislation, not draftmen operating like robots, but draftmen operating in a post-colonial period, a period where we now move into being a republic, the simplification of the actual meaning of all of these terms that are complicated in the law itself. And I think that he is saying something completely different to what everybody else is saying there. He's asking for affirmative action. He's asking to redress the imbalances in the law that stop Black people from making progress. If you don't have that philosophical thought, Then you will continue to say, this is what the drafters in 19 so-and-so said, and historically this system has proven to be correct, and all you're doing is making, tinkering, minor adjustments within the system itself. So I want you all to take that into consideration, because obviously these things are hurting people. And while Mr. Chair and a few might come to express their views, there are many other persons expressing the same views that Mr. Chair is playing. So it's about philosophical thought, and it's about simplifying. It's about affirmative action being applied to whatever it is that we are discussing here today. I just want to make that brief contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prescott. I want to say here, though, for the record, that although I understand exactly where Mr. Cherry is coming from, and I understand where you are also coming from, this particular piece of legislation that we're talking about, though, really goes left field of affirmative action. If you really want affirmative action in this particular legislation, that action will have to come from the individuals in terms of ensuring that the properties that they have, or the persons who engage in illegal dumping, all these things, take affirmative action to stop it. This is not necessarily about affirmative action in terms of business. This is in terms of the health of the people of this country. And the reason why we are at this juncture, let me say it real clear, because everybody likes to run away from the truth, is that values in Barbados have fallen and standards have changed. And I made this point last meeting, and I'm going to reiterate it again. Those of us who grew up in a Barbados that said cleanliness was next to godliness knew what that meant. It meant that you were responsible to take care of the surroundings and yourself. Those of us who went to school know that there was a time when you had to stand up in front of the teacher and put out your fingernails like this for them to look at it, to make sure that your clothes were clean when you were going in and out of school. And we have abandoned these things based on, in my opinion, what I always call cultural penetration. Because now you got from television to social media to people following all sorts of trends, quote unquote, that did not exist in this country before. So let us think seriously when we talk about nuisances and things like that, as it is as wide as humanly possible. It's not just about cleaning land, because you have people who move things, and things drop off trucks and end up on other people's property, and the truck's gone. Nobody stops. Nobody look at it. And the landowner is left with the responsibility to clean up a mess that he or she did not create. Or, I've seen it before, people who, if you rent a skip, they find themselves from all over the place and bring all sorts of things into your skip that you rent. No responsibility whatsoever. So this legislation really is an attempt to bring back some sort of order, real health and responsibility to each other as human beings is concerned, and where health is. So I don't want us to stray too far away from what it is that we're really here to discuss and to get as much feedback as humanly possible on, so that these regulations, whenever they come into being, are given the widest possible criticism, new advice, whatever, so that when we're settled on it, that people are aware. I would agree with you, however, Minister, that we need to do a better job in terms of when legislation is passed, to explain to the general public a lot of the things that go into them, as also at the beginning as to why we are here, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and these sorts of things. But at this point in time, I'm going to ask now if there are any other comments, questions, queries from yourself. I don't know if Mr. Cherry has been able to get back on. If he's back on, if there's anything else that Mr. Cherry would like to say before we move on.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that.
We understand.
Yeah, sorry with, I have a power outage again. So I don't know. I missed a lot. I don't know if you could just recap a little bit quickly for me, please.
So when you were absent, we had from the Ministry of Health, Mr. Chapman, respond to some of your queries based on I guess it would be the relevance of the minister as opposed to the CMO being the one dealing specifically with this particular bill, and because of the expertise that you saw. It was explained then that the expertise within the various ministries also are responsible for advising the minister, who is probably the chief administrator of the ministry in question, and that the decisions are not his personal decisions, but that also all of those persons within there, the technocrats, will become part and parcel by law, if you look at it, of that ministerial decision. And so you have no fear of thinking that the minister can make a willy-nilly decision and then it comes down to the general public. And I put that in as simple as terms as humanly possible, so that you should be able to, grasp the magnitude of what it is that they were saying. But it was a lot. I don't know if I'm clear. I'm not if I'm clear to you if I need to say anything else.
No, you don't.
Okay.
Mr. Chapman is very versed in this, so I can trust his judgment on this one.
Thank you very much. I do want to commend you, though, on being one of the persons who has been able to bring forward alternative ideas in terms of how because this is how I believe government and the general public should always have these types of conversations, where we are free to express our ideas. And I really want to thank you on behalf of this committee for being with us today and for putting forward what you have. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to go through it as deeply as we would have liked to because of the lateness within which we got it. But I believe that Minister Ishmael wanted to also query you on a number of things, and I'm going to, conscious of the time, I'm going to allow him to do so at this point.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wouldn't go into the questions. What I would say just in closing, or my final contribution on this, is that as I opened, I would have opined that the assumptions within the proposal are quite ambitious. For example, the $5,000 per lot. I represent a constituency where the land holdings and the property holdings are not at that level, where persons would have to be paying $5,000 to clear their lot. It is significantly lower than that, Mr. Chairman, but I imagine that Mr. Cherry is more familiar with the larger land holdings, and therefore 5,000 may be where he is setting his average. But I think that assumption is a bit high. I'm also challenged by the assumption of 100 cleanup jobs per week, which is about 400 lots at that size in a month. And I think that also is a very exuberant and ambitious assumption. So if I scale your proposal down and the million plus in tax revenue that you are projecting at the end of your calculations, and I start to whittle away some of those assumptions and let's make them smaller, I think that what you are proposing as a significant benefit at the end for government may not be as significant as you think it will be. And ultimately, just to say in conclusion, from just those 2 points alone, I do think that there is merit in a cost-benefit analysis and a further analysis of your proposal. I think that it is not well placed within what we're discussing here in terms of these amendments, but I do think that from a business perspective, that it is something that can be fleshed out further. You can do some more analyses to find out, for example, how many properties across Barbados right now we have this particular challenge with, what would be the average, a more accurate average cost per cleanup, numbers of times those cleanups will have to be done per year or within a quarter, etc. And maybe use all of that research that will feed in and data that will feed into your proposal to then come back to maybe the Ministry of the Environment, maybe one, maybe the Ministry of Business and is business. Energy and business in particular is the actual name. It may be better then to place maybe this proposal at the feet of one of those agencies for them to be able to then have a real conversation with you and a real discussion with the technocrats of those ministries to see if there is merit in this, and the Minister of Finance, if there's actual merit in being able to have this proposal become something that can be that empowering and enfranchising tool that you are looking for it to be. But I don't think it will sit well within the current amendments and what we're trying to do here to address some of our environmental challenges and public health challenges in the country. But I do applaud and commend you for the proposal with some more work and with some more research and some more accurate data. I do believe that it is something that can come back to the government of Barbados for further consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you very much, and I would like to support you on that. I think, like most things, there's always merit. It's just sometimes we need to stick a little bit closer to the thing at hand. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that we take a 15-minute break. And at the end of that, when we come back, we'll continue with the business. But I know that the live stream will probably be finished when we finish here at this time. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. I want to thank Mr. Cherry and his team for being with us this morning. Clearly, you've given us some food for thought, and even outside of dealing with the bill itself, some of the things that you have put forward are things, as was mentioned earlier, that can be considered in a different place in order to make sure that the enfranchisement of people remains very possible and at the forefront of what is done in Barbados. So again, thank you and your team very much. At this minute, we'll take, I want to set a motion that we take a 15-minute break. And can someone please raise that motion, please? All right, motion by Senator Rogers and seconded by Madame Ford. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are at break.